Thunder Grunt.
Hey, welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show that treats the final edit of a movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose, and my Twitter handle is @ThunderGruntBob. We're going to go around the Zoom table and introduce ourselves, and we might have a surprise for you this time.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I am Arnold Schwarzenegger. No, do you think I tricked anybody? Do you think they thought we got Arnold
For half a second, maybe.
For half a second. I am Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter, and I am the writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV, now available at Amazon.
And last but not least, hopefully, I'm Eduardo Sánchez. I'm a filmmaker and friends with these three fools. And my Twitter handle is Sanchez on the mic.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for saying we're your friends.
Yeah.
That's the only way we got you here, right?
Yeah, I mean, the payment went through, so I figured I'd
So today we're going to talk about a movie that we're going to call Star Wars. We're not calling it A New Hope. We're not calling it Episode 4. We're calling it Star Wars, which I'm happy to report that's still called that on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, you're joining us because you happen to be, from what I understand, a Star Wars fan.
That's right.
Yeah.
It made me really, it got me interested in filmmaking and special effects and writing and just anything that had to do with filmmaking. So I kind of owe my my career to the film. So yeah, very important film. Plus I'm addicted to fucking buying Star Wars crap. So there's that too.
And I was telling the guys, if I remember, didn't you do like some kind of Star Tours video or something?
I did.
Like that?
There was like Disney was remodeling, like they did the reboot of Star Tours like probably 10 years ago now or so. And I knew one of the guys at Disney, and there was like a video that was going to go on the web to kind of show the new stuff, and he hired me to do it. And it was a dream come true. But I was like, there was C-3PO was there. I mean, not Anthony Daniels, of course, but C-3PO, and they had R2-D2, and they had some Jawas, and I think Chewbacca. I mean, it was just like, and I was directing, Jawas walking through the halls and stuff. So it was very cool, and I got to hang out at the Star Tours ride while it was closed, and shoot there. So yeah, it was quite an adventure for me.
Is that stuff still used today?
I don't know. I haven't looked. Probably not. But yeah, I have no idea. This was before, Lucasfilm sold it to Disney. So they probably like revamped everything. But I don't know. I haven't looked. I'll check it out after this and see. It was just, it was like a promotional video, not very simple, but it was cool to shoot in the tour ride, with all the shuttle behind the people and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah, that's great.
And you're actually like on the Star Wars YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I did an episode of I don't even know what the hell it's called. It was like a show about like how Star Wars kind of influenced your life, and they interviewed me, and it was cool. And it was during COVID, so they sent all this equipment. So I was like my own I did my own production, set up all the cameras and stuff, and it was quite a production, but it was cool. And and I know some people at Lucasfilm, and I've been trying to get on. Now I'm trying to get on, one of the shows, to direct one of the shows. So I'm getting close.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Right there yet. So.
Well, I mean, that's like kind of the reason we wanted you on this episode, because we hadn't touched we've done 2 Star Wars movies, guys?
3 if you count Solo.
Oh yeah, we've done. Oh, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Solo.
Yeah.
We've done Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
So we haven't covered any of the original trilogy at all. I don't know why. After all these episodes,
It's a little daunting, you know.
It is. It may be too obvious for some people, but if we finally got here. It's what's 45th anniversary.
Yeah, 45th anniversary.
45th anniversary. All right. Well, do you guys want to just? I mean, Ed pretty much answered the question already, but did you guys want to say anything about what this movie means to you? Just a little short thing.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah. I saw this movie when I was 5 years old, and I remember I was a little scared of it. Like, I must have seen it in the summer of '77 when I was 5, so you can do the math on my age. But I remember hiding my eyes from Darth Vader and stuff. He was kind of scary when he came on. But honestly, it was the movie that changed everything. Like, life was different after I saw this movie. I saw it. I remember there used to be a contest, like when we were kids, you'd always say, I saw it 30 times and I saw it 40 times or something like that. You kind of had this. And I honestly, I'd see it like weekend after weekend. Every birthday we'd see it. I think a friend of mine even had a bootleg. The first time I saw a VHS was somebody had a bootleg of Star Wars and had it at their birthday party for somewhere. So the movie, it's just totally, everything was different after I saw Star Wars. I saw it at the Westview Cinema in Catonsville. Back in
Wow.
when I was 5 years old, just a little kid. And I collected the cards. This is a question I wanted to ask for Ed, actually. What was the first action figure you got? Because I remember they were hard to find, like, initially. I remember mine was Chewbacca. He was the first one I got.
I can't remember which one was the first one, but I mean, I remember like my favorite one was and this was later when Empire, but they did like Luke Skywalker in his pilot outfit. And that was like the most detailed one. And I was like, and then Boba Fett, when Boba Fett came out, before Empire. But I had all of them. And I had the land speeder and some of the die-cast, ships and that stupid little cantina place that with the black, with the cardboard thing. And yeah, man, I was into it. And I had, of course, X-Wing Fighter I had. And remember that noise it made when you press
down R2? Yes.
Yeah.
My parents would never let me buy like the big like Millennium Falcon or
it's too expensive. Yeah.
Too expensive. But I did have the Death Star. Remember the Death Star with the you had the
Opened it
foam.
up.
Yeah, it had like, I don't even think it opened. It was just like the straight thing. It had foam in the trash compactor. Like
like actual foam. Like
it had little foam as like the trash, and that foam is like what makes like that particular toy like valuable or not. Like if you have the foam, it's worth more.
If it survives,
is it like a packet of dust or something that you mix with water?
No, because it kind of it kind of dries up if you don't store it properly. So it's very important to keep your foam wet and moist. Bob, I don't know if you knew that.
No, I don't. That's why all my phone is ruined over here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's honestly what I learned today about Star Wars is this phone thing. I didn't know that.
Here's a story I could never tell anywhere else. But one of the big events of my life was Toys R Us used to have these events when the Star Wars figures came in that you would meet the characters and they would line up in the back and Darth Vader would be there. And they were they're really bad costumes. And we get this huge line and you just go up and shake their hands. Like they didn't even have autographs or anything. And it was like, some dork dressed as Luke Skywalker, there like Harley or something.
That's not Luke.
I mean, that was basically what happened at like the Senate or, outside of the special editions and stuff. Remember that? Like,
So Toys I remember that used to be huge. Like, because to me, it was almost like, oh, they're from the real movie because I was too stupid to realize they're just like the guy in a costume. I was like, wow, Luke Skywalker looks different in real life.
Yeah, it's like the Santa Claus thing. Like, what the heck, is that really Santa? Damn, Santa Claus is at the mall today, man. That's cool.
You were at that age where you went to Disneyland and you thought Mickey Mouse was actually walking around, right?
Right.
Yeah. Nah, I was never that dumb, Bob.
Oh, maybe Jamie was though. He got.
I was.
Jimmy, did you want to say anything about Star Wars? I mean, from your heart.
We, my family growing up we didn't have VHS. We had a beta. This movie was made before So when we went to the video store, all the movies that you wanted to see, we couldn't get. We could just get whatever was available on beta.
Bunch of hippies.
So we just ended up watching a lot of WrestleManias. And like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies were always available on beta. And but we had 5 bootlegs.
Arnold is on this podcast.
Arnold.
It's the worst impression, dude.
I'm not trying. I'm trying to underplay it so I don't get criticized.
Our Austrian listeners are rolling their eyes right now.
There's like a 0.5% Austria.
Yeah. So we had 5 bootleg betas, and one of them was Star Wars. This was extremely formative. What'd you say?
What other ones did you have?
Okay, we had the Karate Kid.
Ooh.
Nice.
Stunt rock.
Annie.
Okay.
Like the musical. So it was a really random, assortment. We had Karate Kid, Annie, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Temple of Doom were the 5 movies that I saw over and over. So it was like the universe was setting me up to be like a screenwriter and passionate about this stuff, because like all those movies are in the screenwriting books as like, formative and important movies. And so maybe not so much Annie, but
yeah, no, definitely Annie, man. Yeah, I mean, Annie's all over the
imagine the history of
Annie's
cinema
great.
without Annie. So it was very formative for me, and I had all the toys. I mean, I had all the toys. They're in an attic somewhere in a house I grew up in Virginia Beach that we had to move away from, but they're all up there collecting dust for whoever lives there now. So
what?
I know, dude.
Jimmy's secretly a millionaire. He doesn't know it.
I think about it too often, man. Like, oh my God, they're up there. What's happened to them? Like, I know it.
Oh man, that's
and I'll say I think I'm going to show my age here a little bit because I think I'm the youngest in this Zoom chat. I came to Star Wars late. I think I said this on our Raiders episode. I was more of an Indiana Jones guy when I was young. I don't know why I wasn't exposed to. Don't shake, Jamie. You love Raiders. Come on. I wasn't exposed to Star Wars early on, but I came into it around the end of the 90s. Before the special editions, but not long before. And then I became addicted to the OT and everything. I think I have all the episode 1 figures and everything in my house.
So when were you born? Well,
82.
All right, so you were too young even for Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
but I mean, but that's not a rare thing, because basically, I mean, there was a major drought after Return of the Jedi, man. Like, yeah. There was an Lucas, George kept that shit sealed for, more than a decade.
I mean, really, the special editions are what I mean, when I got to see that stuff with people again, I mean, that's what because I'd seen them like on VHS and stuff, but that was when I was like, okay, I get it, so I came late.
The VHS versions were pretty late to market, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
When are the Star Wars going to come out? And Lucas, man.
Yeah, and I double dipped even as a kid for the letterbox editions when they came out. I was like, oh yeah, the letterbox one,
especially on VHS, man.
That's what I'm saying.
The THX ones.
Finally on VHS we get the widescreen. Oh man,
yeah, it was like 10 pixels high. That was like
and on a TV that was probably like 19 inches.
The resolution on that was it was like what, like mud.
Okay, so Jamie, who wrote this shit?
The maestro himself. I don't know, what do they call George Lucas?
Yeah,
the man, the legend. And we were mentioning, we'll talk about it in a second, because there were some pre-drafts there's a draft history of this, or a history of drafts before the actual shooting script. And there was also other contributors to this that didn't get a credit, which surprised me when I looked it up, because I always, in my head, I thought they did. And in addition, and we'll talk about that in 1 second.
And this is the time in the show where Jamie gets to mispronounce all the names of the people.
George Lucas.
Jorge Lucas.
George Luke. I don't know how to pronounce Lucas. Mispronounce Lucas. So Lucas. George Lucas.
A quick story. There was somebody whose name was Jorge Luaces. That was a Spanish name. and he got introduced one time as George Lucas. Jorge Luase.
Fantastic.
I wish I knew that. I would have pronounced George that way. I actually, driving home, I had this weird existential crisis. Do you pronounce it Han or Han? Some people.
I go
think
Han.
People in the movie pronounce it differently.
I say Han.
Yeah.
But that
Han
might be
Solo.
our Baltimore might be speaking though with Han.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Like Han.
Hey,
Han.
Han.
Hey, Han. Han Solo.
Oh,
Han
shit, that's
Solo,
a great costume right
Yeah.
there. A
Yeah.
Baltimorean Han Solo.
Solo.
Han Solo.
That has to have been done. That has to. But
Yeah, I think I always go Han and feel self-conscious about it. Like I know I'm wrong. I'm like Han Solo, and I'm like it should be Han Solo. So anyway,
now you can just say Solo. They fixed it for you.
but the box office for this has it pegged. This doesn't even seem right, or maybe I always see
It probably
adjusted
includes
inflation.
all of the releases, right?
Well, that's what I mean. It almost seems low because the box office this has is 775 million, and I would have thought this movie, but maybe I've just seen adjusted for inflation numbers, would be in the billion category.
Seems
But-
low.
Well, yeah, I mean, adjusted for inflation for sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it 60 times in the theater. So.
Half of that's Jamie.
Playground clout, baby.
Well, but literally, the ticket prices were literally like a tenth of what they are now.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it was like $3. It was expensive back then.
I think
Now
for
it's
a
like
kid,
15, right?
Yeah.
I think for a 5-year-old kid, I think I paid like $1 to get
Yeah, it was like $1.50 or something. Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember paying $3.50. That's how old I am. That was the low that I remember. So now.
We weren't allowed to buy the popcorn though. My dad would be like, "Yeah, too expensive, too expensive."
Yeah.
But Jamie, those writers that you spoke of that aren't credited, I guess they're not. Is he the only one credited as writer?
On IMDb, he is the only one credited.
Yeah.
Officially, he's the only
Man,
one.
that's crazy. So I have this book that I'll be quoting a lot from that the listeners can't see, the annotated screenplays. And it is basically like a writer's commentary from George Lucas and Lawrence Kasdan, and Irvin Kershner's in there about every single one of the choices made for every one of the movies. It's really cool. And in it, George Lucas says, Gloria Katz, and I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm having Jamie's job here. Willard Hayek. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think.
He says they wrote, they did a dialogue pass on the fourth draft, and they 30% of the dialogue in the movie is theirs. So it's crazy that 30% of the dialogue is theirs and they're not even credited as writers. Do you deal with that sometimes, Jamie?
I do. Here's the weird thing this is the reason it surprised me. I sort of remember George being sort of generous with credits, because what happens is, and I'm not throwing poor George under the bus here, but what happens is the producers usually submit the credits kind of first to the WGA. So if George could have submitted those other people to the WGA before it got to arbitration. Like,
Gotcha.
So he could have just been like, I'm going to do you a solid and submit you. No, I'm not saying, if he feels that he shouldn't and they agree to it, that's fine. I don't know how many.
Yeah. No, it's weird because in this book, he's like, really like, it's their dialogue. Like, they did such a good job. Like, it's weird.
I mean, I think also it has, like, I mean, especially back then, it was just like, they tried to keep the credits clean, and the idea of like written and directed by George Lucas, it's just, it's just a cleaner thing than.
Yeah, it's a great marketing tool, right?
It's a better marketing story. This guy did it.
Oh my God, the guy from American Graffiti, and now he's back. It makes more sense than him and these other guys, the people that you don't know.
Exactly.
So happens all the time, man.
Yeah. It's crazy.
No,
well, I hope they got paid.
Well, I'm sure they did.
I'm sure they got.
I'm sure there's
paid,
nothing nefarious that way.
Well, I knew one of my teachers at UCF who was like one of the guys who did the optical lineup on the some of the special effects, and he even got back end.
Whoa!
That's the only movie that he ever got back end on. So I think
what a movie to get it though.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, well, that was That was his call, his claim to fame in the school, man. He was one of the optical guys on Star Wars. Well,
I'd go to his class after hearing that.
Yeah. Well, he was not the best teacher, but that's a different.
Still, he has that one thing to scream at people when he's in an argument. Do you know who I am?
You know what I
the
did?
optical line guy on Star Wars.
He did not like me, man. He did not like me.
Well, he's one of our best listeners. Now he's gonna
unsubscribe.
So
I'm gonna get an angry email.
Here he is zooming in.
We got a surprise for you, Ed.
From your past, blast from your past.
We found all of your enemies just to talk.
And he sounds just like Arnold. But like for Empire, I mean, not to go down a path we don't need to go down, but George did give the original writer, is it Lee Brackett?
I think so.
Lee Brackett got Lawrence Kasdan got credit, and I think George took a story by, even though George, from what I've seen, did do a draft and then did a draft after Lee and did a lot of work. So George was a pretty generous credit person, I've always found. So anyway, that's the only reason it kind of surprised me when I saw it.
Wasn't there like a false story about him? I feel like in the aughts about George wanting to get credit for Empire and Jedi post them coming out because he made so many changes or something. I remember
Who knows?
I remember some story about that floating around and it was completely false. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
That was never true.
Well, directors also make tons of changes on scripts and rarely get credit. So it's kind of I don't know how credits work. I think Jamie and I work together a lot, and we try to be as generous and kind of as honest as possible. But sometimes I guess when you have so many writers and stuff, it's like I don't know.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. As long as you get paid, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I hope they got paid.
The back end would be nice too.
I tell you the hard thing about it is though, because I've missed out on a couple things I've done. I haven't gotten because of WGA arbitration and stuff.
The check's in the mail, Jamie. I told you.
Well, the hard part is you don't get the residuals, the WGA residuals, and for something like Star Wars, that could be millions of dollars.
Yeah, good point.
When you hear John August, when he talks about, he kind of tells you what his Aladdin, the Aladdin remake, he made millions of dollars off of residuals, off the Aladdin remake.
That's really crazy.
You can imagine if those two writers were on here, literally they probably lost out on a few $1 million based on that credit.
It was just, I thought it was an interesting thing to discover about this movie that I didn't know before. So.
Yeah, no, totally.
Not dogging on George. I love George.
No, this is a pro George podcast. He's had enough. Let's leave the guy alone. Yeah, seriously. Did you guys want to talk about the off-screen movie, Jamie? Is this your point?
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was this is kind of how the movie. One of the lessons I take from the movie all the time is there's a couple things. One is the in media res kind of thing, the start and the middle. Like this movie does that so well. And I think it blew my mind when I was a kid. Like the fact, first of all, and I know this came later, but the fact that he put episode 4 in there, just kind of, it let you fill in what the first 3 episodes were and things like that. It just lets you do that. But also the fact that we're coming in on that scroll, it kind of tells us that they just won a major battle. We're coming off of it. And this is the back end of that. And we have these 2 spaceships flying after each other. And then these stormtroopers who we've never seen before, when they blew up that door and came through that smoke and had that battle, that is probably the moment my life changed. Like I was like, wow, what is going on here?
You became a man that day.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that scene. Yeah, because I mean, Greg, my partner, Greg Hale, also like he says that when Darth Vader comes through that door, that's the moment he realized he wanted to be a filmmaker. And I don't have quite that. Like I don't know exactly when, but yeah, I mean, it was just there's so many moments in that movie, that like kind of changed shit.
Yeah.
So what you're saying because it threw us into a battle, like the movie, like the story's going, and we're just joining.
We're
That's what you're
joining
saying?
some ongoing thing.
Some ongoing,
Yeah.
some saga, right?
Yeah, Jamie, it's the polar opposite of the breakfast scene. I know you're sensitive about the breakfast scene.
Right. So in my book, I talk about the breakfast scene because I watched a lot of pilots, and a lot of pilots actually, like, the second scene is they're eating breakfast and they're talking, and but instead this throws you into a story and we have to catch up. There's a whole off-screen movie that happens, and we've talked about the off-screen movie before. So Terry Brasio and Ted Elliott had this concept called the off-screen movie, and their idea is that the off-screen movie gives momentum to the movie. Like, there's if you have a world going on outside of the movie and there's these great scenes happening, then the movie has momentum, because I think the audience is kind of doing the math on all that stuff in the background. So there's all this stuff, and Star Wars is one of the best examples because it does it in media res, and it also does it in those words like "my father fought in the Clone Wars," So it does world building.
There'll be no one to stop us this time. It's in the first Darth Vader
Well,
scene.
what happened last time, right?
Yeah. And what a cool off-screen movie does is, you know how, like, the best scenes of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars and stuff like that are the opening scenes. You know how you jump in the middle? What the good off-screen movie does is, even when you come to Luke, we're kind of doing another fade in with Luke. We're like, what's this guy up to? What's his deal? So almost every time we come to somebody, Mos Eisley, when we end up in the cantina, there's a whole off-screen movie there that happens, like with Solo and things like that. So every time we come in, we're kind of in the middle of something and we're trying to figure it out. And Terry Brasio, he kind of says, Terry Brasio is the writer of, like, Shrek and Aladdin and Pirates of the Caribbean. He says Small Soldiers, Little
action figure,
figures. There you go.
What he says is, so what he came to, his realization with the off-screen movie. He said, if you want to make a movie boring, put all the off-screen movies in it. Have all the off-screen movie scenes in it. So fill in all the gaps, and your movie will be kind of boring. So his thing is, by taking things out, that's what gives momentum. He actually, in that article, it's an old article, he uses Blair Witch as another example. He said he specifically uses the Blair Witch Project, and he says, horror has its own off-screen movie, and in the Blair Witch Project, all that stuff that's happening off screen gives the movie momentum. The audience is filling in the gaps, and so you can never really get bored, because the audience always kind of has some work to do while they're watching the trajectory. It's never slowing it down.
Yeah, so, that movie Blair Witch was a work of genius, man.
We wanted you to say, so yeah.
Anyway, that's the off-screen movie.
You've talked about specifically with that lesson, Jamie, big world, small window. And even though this is like massive world, big window, but like the cantina is a great example, right? Like that has its own big world, small window. Like you said, each one of these aliens has their own ship somewhere, their own story somewhere. Your imagination,
their own planet somewhere,
wild, right? Their own species. You're like, holy shit! There's like 500 movies in this room, So
even the worn, the used universe methodology, where everything has stains and dirt and stuff like that. Even that speaks to the off-screen movie in some ways. It's throwing all this stuff has history. All
the ships look like shit.
Yeah,
everything is gross
gross and grimy, worn down.
Everything is used, has a history. And even like Han Solo, like you introduce him, and then you see this, the whole thing with Jabba the Hutt that luckily in the original they cut that scene, the Jabba the Hutt scene out. But you're like, man, what the hell happened with this guy? Man, this guy's badass, and you want to know.
No,
that's cool.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
because
it really is. Yeah,
the Jabba the Hutt aspect, like, I think it hurts the movie to put that scene in, because it's taking the off-screen movie, and it actually lessens the tension in some ways. Because in one scene you have Jabba the Hutt, you have Greedo try to kill him, and there's a bounty on his head. The next scene, Jabba's kind of reasonable. It's like, well, gonna make some money.
He's
You know,
also
it's
not
like-
very. He's not very threatening either in that.
No.
scene. He's not.
No.
Yeah.
It really hurts it.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate that scene.
No, but that's a great example of like we're in media res with Han Solo, and we're trying to figure out what the hell's, like you said, Ed, what the hell's going on with this? This is this whole other thing, and it's so captivating, and you're just desperate for answers, and there's lots of tension around finding out what the hell's going on, and like who else might be around the corner wanting to shoot him, things like that. So
Do you guys also find it interesting, maybe a little off topic, that the off-screen? It's like this is the one franchise that tried several times to show us the off-screen movie. For better or worse throughout the franchise.
yeah,
You know what I
as
mean?
it expanded,
As it kept
Yeah.
expanding, it
Prequels.
kept showing us. I mean,
the
like,
prequels.
hey, do you want to know what happened right before A New
Yeah,
Hope?
and-
Well,
yeah.
we got that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just kind of like it was answering the questions we're saying right now. Maybe shouldn't have been.
Yeah,
answered.
it is
No,
weird that
not
is
reviewing
kind of
those
the
movies.
off-screen movies. Yeah,
Yeah, they're the off-screen movies. Yeah,
It's Lord of the Rings has a similar thing that they went. I guess he went back and explained stuff in that last book he wrote. And that book's the least interesting book of all of them, because it's just kind of this weird explanation
the
of
Similarian.
It's just
but
nothing but context. Is that all it
Yeah.
is? Yeah.
It's just
Exactly.
naming people who had whose kid, and it's just constant. Yeah, what happened then?
but if you read Lord
I've
of the
never
Rings,
read it, so I don't know.
It's not a fun read. It's not, even if you love Lord of the Rings.
And Lord of the Rings has a lot of my father fought in the Clone Wars kind of things. Like there's Sauron, there's the early days, and now we'll get an Amazon series that'll fill in the gap. But there's a lot of stuff in it that you can just imagine, and a big off-screen movie going on that you really don't need filled in.
Yeah. Let's talk
There's
about.
actually, real quick, there's actually a cool
No.
book called Tales from the Cantina, which fills in a lot of the backstories of all the little characters, and it's it's kind of breaking the rule of the movie, showing what happened before, but it's interesting. There's some cool stories, and that's what I also love about Star Wars, is that you can, if you want to know that off-screen story, you can dive in and find out about it, and sometimes it's not as good as you thought it would, but sometimes they come through pretty well.
I know the expanded universe. There's some great stuff in there for sure.
There is.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
I love the Ewok movies. Okay,
Hey, me too.
Yeah,
man.
man, yeah.
they're on Disney Plus too. I just found
You
that
know,
out.
that was one of the 5 betas. Was taped off TV. The Battle for Endor.
Hell, okay, all right.
Whoa,
There we go.
fancy.
How about the holiday special?
Well,
No, I wish I had that beta tape.
it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. I've seen it maybe too many times. Yeah, but let's get to some of the thing you were talking about, Jimmy. Rewriting and the original draft to Final Cut, right? Like this is a huge topic for even us to talk about.
Yeah, so this is kind of a long one, but what I thought I'd do here, and again, this is coming right from George's mouth. So this is George Lucas telling us that this is what it used to be compared to what it ended up being. There's like immense power. Like what I'm hoping that we can gain out of this is seeing that like it didn't start great. It started shitty. Like your favorite movie
Isn't that
starts
that's right?
out as a shitty first draft. So like there is power in taking the time to go through third draft, fourth draft to hone in on what makes your story great and kind of get it to reach its full potential. So I'm going to compare the two versions, like the original and now, and we can like just hash out like what can we learn from that? Like what would the movie have been like if it stayed this way, right? So I'm just going to go down the list and then we'll try to figure out what the lessons are for what we think the lessons are. So the first one is the story took place in humanity's future. It actually took place in the year 3300. It wasn't a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away until the fourth draft. And George said, I knew I wasn't doing science fiction. I was doing space opera, a fantasy film, a mythology piece, and a fairy tale. I needed to establish this was a made-up world so I could do anything I wanted with the story. So can you imagine Star Wars if it was Earth 3300?
Yeah.
You're really tying yourself down to some baggage too, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it speaks about the importance of like setting up your genre, because like I guess maybe he was hearing pushback, like, well, this is we start micro-analyzing. It's like the Gremlins rule, right? Like the more you try to ground it in reality, the more you're like, well, how does this work?
You know what's interesting about that though is if you look at his influences, most of those are grounded in Earth. Like Flash Gordon. Gordon is grounded in Earth. John Carter is grounded in Earth. Buck Rogers is grounded in Earth. So it's interesting that he didn't, you know what I mean? That he had the kind of foresight to say, this is fantasy. I can do whatever I want in that world.
Well, and the fact that that's the first thing you see, those words, and that's just like completely, it sets you free. It really sets you free to be like, okay, this has, again, the baggage. It has no baggage.
Zero.
It gives you permission to just, anything can happen, and you're going to
which I think, is part of the reason why like Mandalorian is so popular, and like Rogue One is supposedly, the kind of the best, supposedly the best movie, after the original trilogy, because it just has less baggage, you know what I mean? And that's, I think a lot of people were disappointed with Book of Boba Fett because there's so much baggage with Boba Fett. Everybody has, he's a badass, whatever, and it's like no matter what they do, they kind of, they're going to disappoint a certain thing, a segment of the audience, just like the Force Awakens and all those. It's like, so I think that's great. I think I didn't know that. And it's so smart because it's like kind of like Lord of the Rings. Like you're like, you accept, you're more open to stuff when you're like, that's not in real world.
It's not, it's not in New Zealand. It's in,
Middle Earth. What is Middle Earth?
What's
Middle Earth? Not here.
So
they don't have 7-Eleven.
That's I didn't know that. That's great.
I also think my one point would be that like doing that also frees George up from like commenting on any of society's events or making any like sly references to stuff that happened in our history and everything. Like it frees you up. You don't have to do all that. You don't get those questions either. Like, wait a minute. So people will be asking those questions like, if this happened, how come it's 2,000 years this happened,
It could be more metaphoric and more like a mythology.
Right, exactly. Than
a history.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, that's awesome. I'm glad you all found it as interesting as I did.
That's a good one, Jimmy. That's a good one.
No, it's good. It's good.
Okay, second one. R2-D2 originally spoke English and had just English-speaking dialogue. And so the two robots were just arguing two English guys. And here's what George said. He said, originally, I wanted both the droids to talk, but it took the mystery, the charm, and the uniqueness away from both of them. They were too similar. After the first draft, I decided I wanted to make them as different as possible so they'd be easily identifiable and they'd be wholly separate characters. So,
I mean, that's just classic comedy rules, too. If you have a duo, they can't be the same person. You have to have a clash, right?
Because they are the comic duo.
Yeah, they are the comic duo. Yeah.
You got to have the straight man, right?
The buddy cop movie does not, if they're both the same, it doesn't work, does it?
They're the two old Muppets, man.
Yeah. You need to have the odd couple. One's uptight and one's loose and adventurous, right?
Yeah, for me, it speaks to the power of contrast, right? Okay, the third one. And Jamie, this is building off of your in media res. The third one is George always wanted the movie to start the way it does, but even in the shooting draft, it opened with Luke on Tatooine. So he said, this is kind of a long quote, but it's important. He said, all my friends gave me notes that Luke was my leading character, so we should start with Luke. So I did that. I wrote it that way. We shot it that way, but I couldn't get it out of my mind that I wanted the robots to be taking you through the story. I wanted the robots to be taking you to Luke, Luke taking you to Ben, Ben taking you to Han taking you to Princess Leia. I always wanted each character to take you to the next person. So I finally said, I don't care what people say. I decided to follow my heart. So imagine if we met Luke first. Like, what a different fucking movie.
Well, it wouldn't start the way, it wouldn't start like you were saying, mid off-screen movie, right? Because that's like the beginning of a story, right?
It would be a wholly different experience.
Right. Right.
I'm sure Ed and Jamie have gotten notes from people who are like, you should do this. You should do it this way.
Make it chronological.
You should show the Blair Witch.
Got to show her origins and everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I mean, we would have like missed out on that crazy first shot, which is like, that, and especially on the big screen, man, like that Star Destroyer going over was just like, you'd never seen anything like that. So yeah, it would have definitely like deflated it would just kind of killed the momentum from the very beginning.
I feel like I read a comic book or something as a kid, or there was some version that maybe I even read the novelization that started with him like looking up through his binoculars at the battle or something. And it was really
maybe that was originally how the script was, but yeah.
And like he was kind of watching it, and then you get, of course, he had all that stuff with Biggs and his friends back home, which you've probably seen clips from. That's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of boring.
Okay, yeah. I would go with what Ed said too. Like most people that would suggest you do it as like a strict storyline, they're forgetting that film is also a visual medium. Like you said, you want that giant opening. That's more enticing. That's going to grab the audience. Like, it's not just about what makes the most sense. Like, don't you have to start with Luke just because it's about him? Like,
yeah, exactly. No, I think it's instructive.
Give us some texture,
that here,
right?
Yeah. I think it's instructive that here's like one of the most famous movies and main heroes of all time, and we don't meet him for 18 minutes.
Yeah.
And you can pull that off with the right ingredients.
I was going to say if you look at it purely structurally, like if you're doing the minute thing and stuff, it totally throws it off, even though this movie has the most classic structure of like any movie you can find. It's like 100%, but it does throw the minute markers off. Because obviously if you're supposed to have a catalyst at minute 12, it's not coming to like minute 25 or something like that in this movie.
I think, it goes to show you that that doesn't always need to be followed to tell a good story, right?
Yeah, Jamie, man. Yeah.
I think so.
Cat.
I think the cat, man. Yeah, man.
I think you guys are wrong.
Break free.
And I think we've proven that this movie isn't any good.
All right, here's one of my favorite ones. This one. Okay, number 4. In the first draft, the Force was not explained, and it didn't have a light or dark side. It was just the Force. So George said, I realized we needed to explore the idea of positive and negative, 2 sides of every entity, a pull and a push, a yin and a yang. The struggle between those 2 sides of nature became something I knew we needed to include in the film. I mean, imagine no dark side.
Either way, wouldn't that come through with the character's choices how to wield it?
Well,
like, even there is no dark side.
Well, we're going to get onto that next. That's the next.
You know what I mean, though? It would have come out in the writing anyway, I almost feel like. It's a good choice. It's a good choice. I'm just saying, if the Force exists and there's some people who use it for bad, then it's the same thing, kind of, right?
Yeah, right. That's true. It probably would have worked itself out organically, and it did. But what it reminded me of is I read a lot of scripts. Jamie, tell me if you do too. I read a lot of scripts that have a theme, but not an opposing theme. So it starts to come across like a PSA. Everybody on screen is sort of like, be a good person, be a good person, be a good person. And you never have the person who's the bad person who has their own agendas and mindsets and mantras and wielding power from being a bad person. So I think it speaks to the power of having an opposing theme in order to make your theme resonate. There'll be so many times where I'll be like, I'm reading a 90-page PSA.
Also, since we got Ed here too, like having the idea of like a dark side also adds like a slight horror element to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, and also Darth Vader. I mean, his name is almost dark.
Darth Vader, right?
Yeah.
I think it kind of naturally come, and he's black. He's dressed in black. I mean, and again, like kind of what Jamie was saying is that he was kind of a scary. I was 8 when I was 7 or 8, and it was he kind of scared the shit out of me a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And
I think that
dark side and light side was just made a lot of sense. And Ben was like so opposite. He's like just so gentle and and also you realize like, damn, Ben is like hiding out. Like something is up. Like Ben is in trouble, man. He's a hermit. Like, what's going on with Ben's backstory? How did he end up here? You know what I'm saying? Like,
the dark side is something to be feared. Like, if you look at
it, Ben fears that shit. Look where it got Ben. You know what I'm saying? So
he became a hobo. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically became a hobo.
Yeah, right. Nothing wrong with that. It just
nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah.
Jamie, I feel like you were about to say something at some point, and did I cut you off?
No, I was just chiming in. I was going to say that Darth Vader, that breathing thing really, I think, was the thing that creeped me out when I saw it, that breathing thing. But also this whole dark side, light side, Obi-Wan's basically a wizard. On this watch, I noticed it even more. Like
me too.
Yeah.
I never remembered like that little thing where he goes like that and you hear the noise, boom, and the I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, that's like his first telekinesis on screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got all these like wizard tricks. So the dark side is just like, very much like a dark wizard versus the light wizard. It's very similar.
On this rewatch, when I was like, did he make the sound or did he have something in the room bonk? I know it's a stupid thing, but I was like, what exactly happened right there? Can he throw sound? Okay. Is that a Jedi trick?
Well, even the sand people scream that he does. I've always watched it and be like, why didn't we see Jedi do weird shit like that in any of the other movies? I love that. Like he just throws out this supernatural scream. Like that would have been cool to have a Jedi like a Banshee Jedi.
Well, they've been adding force powers, like
maybe they'll do it. Ed, right? When you get your episode, do it, dude. Banshees.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Jedi Banshees.
Give us credit too. We want credit.
So here's number 5. It's building off that force stuff, the difference between the force in the first draft and the force in the movie. The force was like the force powers were basically nothing. They were just intuition. Like they couldn't move things. It was basically just having like a sixth sense of intuition and being like psychic. There was no like physical power, supernatural powers involved in using the force wasn't a thing. So Luke didn't use the force to destroy the Death Star, and there was really no Death Star in the early draft. That's another comment coming down, but Luke didn't use the force to save the day. Basically, he just like used his ship. So I think that's pretty fucking instructive.
That's huge. How does that even work?
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. How does that first draft even work then? I don't even, man. Okay.
Yeah. Like we've talked about, the idea of a premise specific tactic. In Get Out, Chris uses the cotton to jam his ears to prevent himself from being hypnotized so that he could escape. That is a tactic that is so specific to the movie. It's something we could only see in Get Out. In Ghostbusters, they cross the streams in order to defeat the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That is a tactic that we could only see in Ghostbusters and is so specific to the movie, it wouldn't work in any other movie. So using the Force is like, it couldn't be more premise specific. It is a tactic that could only be used in this movie, and then they use it in all the other movies. But so I think it's really instructive about like the importance of a premise specific tactic to win.
How did that first draft handle Luke's arc if at the end was just like, oh, I aim good?
He was a whole different character. That's a whole different story that I didn't think was very instructive because it's too complicated. But
I'm just curious because that's like a huge change.
It was basically Luke and Anakin were two characters that became Obi-Wan and Luke. Okay. Okay, the sixth one. This is my longest quote, but I think like it's pretty building off of everything that we said before. In the early drafts, this is crazy to me. In the early drafts, Han Solo was a Jedi warrior they enlisted to help them.
Oh, Jesus.
Han Solo was a Jedi warrior. So it was just like two Jedi warriors and a wannabe Jedi. Here's what George said, and I think this is like the most instructive quote of the book. George says, Luke is this young, idealistic, naive, clean kid about to be initiated in the rites of manhood. To make that work, I needed someone to contrast him against. Ben is this wise teacher. He's a good-natured person and conservative, but there's no fun in that contrast. Just like I had Vader to contrast with Ben, I made Solo more cynical and world-weary, a pessimist to play opposite of Luke's good nature. I tried to establish this kind of contrast with all the characters in the later drafts, even with the droids. You always try to set up a character and then you create their opposite. Another character who has an opposing point of view on everything, so they can argue. If you have two characters that are the same, talk the same, act the same, think the same, there's never going to be anything for them to talk about ever.
Right.
So, I mean, damn. Imagine Han Solo as a Jedi warrior in this movie.
I mean, him being part of the establishment is not okay. You know what I mean? It's such a good change.
Yeah. So, I think
him being religious.
workshop your characters so they're as different as possible, is what I got out of this. It's those agents of change, guys.
Yeah.
You give a character a bunch of people who represent the opposites, and that forces them to like look inward and be like, am I doing this right? Maybe I could be different. Maybe I could be better. And I mean, everybody changes Han throughout this movie. Yeah. Like Han is constantly, everybody is an agent of change to Han. Everybody's like, oh, I guess that's what you're good for. Looking out for yourself and like making him question his ways. I mean, Han Solo has his own awesome arc in this movie. Okay,
also, you could argue that Han gives the movie its like, I don't know what word to use, swagger. That's what. Like,
oh, dude!
Like without Han, there's an element that I don't know that Star Wars would have been the phenomenon it was.
He's the kind of modern man, aspect. While everybody else might.
He's kind of from Earth, like he's not, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, he basically said it perfect in his quote. He's fun, right? Like you make him a stuffy old Jedi warrior. All the fun is sucked out of the movie.
He's cool. He has a dog and a cool tip.
He's got a dog.
Yeah, he's got a pet. Yeah. Plus, I mean, and also this is kind of, it's like why the whole like, Greedo shot first, Han shot first, like the whole, fixing it in the special editions, like the idea that Han shot this guy was why Han Solo made him cool. You were like, oh man, that guy, he just shot that. I mean, obviously Greedo's going to probably shoot. I mean, because Greedo, it seemed like, was just going to take him back to Jabba the Hutt or whatever. And Han's like, nah, man, I'm going to shoot you under the table.
Imagine if he was a pacifist.
Yeah,
it would suck.
Well, now they shoot at the same time in the right.
Yeah, that's one of those frustrating things in the trilogy. In the special edition, where you're like, just leave Han the same. He was by the end, he's a good guy. Let him be a little bit of a bad guy. He's questionable. He's got questionable morality. He's a spice. He's a drug.
Smuggler. Yeah, and he loves that about himself.
Yeah,
So, like, if you don't front load all that moral questionability, then the big choices in the end don't have their impact. So,
well, and that's probably like the trouble with like in the different podcasts, of course, but like the episode 1 is that, too many Jedi, I guess, right? Too many, and it just didn't have
too many similar characters.
Yeah, too many similar, and didn't have that Han Solo like just kind of asshole, like.
Yeah. There's nobody in the prequels like saying what we're thinking about the stuff. You know what I mean? But Han kind of did that. He was like, you guys are all stuffy and it's better just to shoot first and not ask questions later.
The closest we get is Watto.
And that's like nothing on screen, That's like
your mind tricks don't work on me, yeah.
Right, yeah. Like Liam Neeson's cool, but he's not cool as like a very serious dude,
But that's a really good point. The prequels kind of are what this was gonna be.
Yeah, right? I can't help but like think about that, like George not following his own advice.
It's interesting.
We all make mistakes.
Yeah, man. He's earned the right to do that.
There's a graphic novel based off of one of his early drafts. You might see it out there. It's called The Star Wars. It's by Rinsler. Put it together. The guy who does all the history books.
All the making ofs.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he did the graphic novel. He adapted some of the early scripts to the graphic novel. I got it. I couldn't get through about 5 pages of it. It's so boring. It's just like a bunch of Jedi Knights sitting around, it's just so dull.
I mean, it sounds kind of familiar.
Yep.
It's all meetings and stuff, right?
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's all administrative meetings, management.
That's why I go to the movies, because I want it to feel like work.
It's just conference calls.
Oh shit! Yeah, Star Wars, the conference call.
The conference call.
So the seventh one, we're almost to the end here. Of this topic, the Death Star wasn't capable of destroying a planet, and it didn't even destroy a planet Alderaan until the 4th draft. It was just a base that had some high-powered weapons. It didn't have the power to crush the rebellion. I mean,
it's a stakes problem there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like Jamie, like imagine this movie without the Death Star. Like,
where's the urgency?
Right. It changes everything.
I mean, we should jump into that really quick, because I think this movie has a great instructive kind of thing that's happening. Is, structure-wise, it has this this finish line goal. So most stories, when you're coming up with them, you have a hero, a goal, an obstacle, and stakes. So in this movie, you have Luke Skywalker has to transport the droids to the rebels before the Death Star becomes operational and blows up planets and destroys the rebels, essentially. So you have like perfect stakes, these galactic stakes, but you have a very clear, what this movie does as well, it has a very clear finish line where you can, and here's the key to having a good goal, is it has a finish line, as opposed to just saying Luke Skywalker's running. You put the finish line there, like he has to get the droids to the rebels, and that's the thing. You could take a picture of that. It's the difference between somebody writing The Fugitive and saying a guy's on the run and a guy must solve the murder of his wife and he's on the run, while he's on the run.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie has a great finish line, but it also has really good stakes in that there's kind of a ticking clock with the thing becoming operational and then also finding where the rebel base is as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was the finale of that draft, too? Was it still that blowing? You said it didn't blow up?
I don't know what the finale of the draft was. I just know that it didn't blow up any planets, nor did it have the power to do that.
Was the ending just, hey, we're going to stop being evil? All right, yay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is another big one. Here we go. Obi-Wan did not die until the 4th draft. And I think this is a great instructive quote. George says, as I was writing the 3rd draft, and they had already cast Alec Guinness based on this 2nd draft. So they cast Alec Guinness, and he didn't know he was going to die. Like, he had this 2nd draft. So he says, as I was writing the 3rd draft, I realized once they left the Death Star, there wasn't anything for Ben to do but just stand around for the rest of the movie. And that's not good for a character of his importance. So it wasn't until the 4th draft that I decided we had to kill Ben, and we'd have his voice guide Luke for the remainder of the story. Alec Guinness was upset, but I managed to convince him that it was best for the movie. So, I mean, damn, I think it's, for me, like, I read a lot of scripts that the characters don't earn their place on screen. I read a lot of scripts where, like, there's 4 characters and 3 of them just stand around for, like, most of the story. And there's just, like, one guy talking and doing things, and everybody's like, cool, let's do it.
Just, like, I mean, like, Ed, you said how, like, Darth Vader was super scary. Like, for me, the most emotional part of the movie is his death. Like, that when I first saw the movie, I cried.
It made you hate him, like, it made you, like, because before that he was, he was in charge of the, barbecuing and the Skywalker's aunt and uncle.
Yeah,
but and then he force choked that one guy in the Death Star. But yeah, killing Ben was like, man, how could you kill Ben?
Yeah, it's a major personal stakes raiser. Yeah.
Also, like, it shows so much. It's more like premise delivery with, like, the Force and everything, right? Like, Like it shows us what that.
It expands the off-screen movie of what the Force is and who.
Also, what just happened?
Mystique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just disappeared.
And the fact that his body disappears, you're like, there's maybe he's not dead.
Imagine the movie without any of this.
That's going on.
That's like the ultimate cliffhanger. I mean, except for Empire, but that's before Empire. That's like what happened to Ben.
I think this is a pretty big stroke of genius with the rewriting process. This one, like,
I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but I think the way I've usually heard it is they rewrote that during the shoot. And it was
really?
A lot of times it gets attributed to George's wife, like, you gotta, and he realized, and George tells different stories all the time. So it's he's really cagey to track down for this stuff.
It was also like 40, 45 years ago. It's hard to remember how things went down.
This book's about 20 years old. So, okay. So this is my last point, and then we can move on to the next thing. George originally planned to cram the entirety of the prequels and the original trilogy into one single long movie. He said, there was a point in the second draft where I decided to limit Star Wars. I knew what happened later. I knew what happened before, but I decided that this is what mattered most in this story that I needed to make the script about. Like
Zack Snyder's Star Wars.
How long was that?
Yeah, I know. It's like 4 or 5 hours. Like, yeah, I mean,
we've talked about.
I feel like the off-screen movie thing covers any commentary on this. Right?
Yeah.
And I think I've heard other people debate this. Like he does say that, George says this, but they say, he didn't have the idea to do all these like I Am Your Father and this and that and all this.
No, and they talk about that changing in this this book too. But as far as like the whole of the ideas of the whole thing,
right?
He was trying to. In the Rise of Skywalker episode, we talked about the power of consolidation, and they did the opposite. They tried to just like cram as much shit as possible into the movie so it becomes this bloated mess instead of a very focused like period of time with a few characters that we focus on. They try to cram in as many characters as possible and as much shit as possible, and there's power in consolidation when you have all these ideas.
Also, like for the way he was trying to approach it then, I mean, Ed, you direct TV, Jamie, you're Save the Cat Writes the TV guy. You could make a TV show if you wanted. You're making a movie.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like what that idea sounds like a TV show.
Yeah, it's a mini series, like what they used to call it back then.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so thanks for doing that with me, guys. I felt like that was like
I didn't
really
know any
cool.
of that stuff, so that's
great,
like
that's
all
really
that
cool.
stuff. I feel like all that stuff you can learn from. It's why like your favorite movie didn't start that way. So keep rewriting.
And also, that's how most movies are, too. Don't think when you read stuff like that, it means the movie was, like, in bad hands or something. That's
remember
how most things. Yeah.
Back to the Future was a water heater that didn't move.
Yeah, there was no car. Yeah. That's how these things happen.
Yeah.
It's like magic how they come together.
Well, and I know this is a screenwriting thing, but, even in the, you could do a whole thing of how the movie changed in the editing, editing too.
I think that's writing, too, though. I mean, there's writing
absolutely. That's your final draft,
Exactly.
And so movies change so much in the editing room, so
that, like Ed, that's the reason we kind of went with the final edit of the movie is the script, because trying to pick one version of a script to talk about is impossible.
Oh yeah.
What would you pick for most movies? There's like 20 drafts.
We always treat the final edit of the movie as the script.
And that's the one people see, so they don't have to read a whole script to listen to the show. I was gonna say this next one. I feel like this is Ed. This is like almost directly for you.
Yeah,
this
I
is
put this on here for you, Ed.
I know this is like the Ed segment. Creating toyetic characters, the action figure exercise.
Jamie, where did this term toyetic come from?
I don't know. It's something I've heard before. I mean, I haven't heard it a lot, but I hear people use this toyetic kind of thing about concepts. It's some lame thing that people
do you ever hear it in your when you get notes and stuff for your jobs?
I can't say I have personally gotten the toyetic note, but I've heard other people have gotten the toyetic note.
Well,
Okay,
explain
so,
what this is. Explain what
okay,
this is.
so bingo. Ed, one of our fans made a bingo card for all the things we say over and over in every fucking episode. And this is one of the bingo squares. I read amateur scripts all day, every day. That's my job. I read bad, no offense, but mostly bad scripts. People who are trying to learn the craft and are new. Not always, but most of the people that I work with are new to the craft and they're learning. And in screenwriters now are so afraid to unintentionally like discriminate against potential actors that most of the scripts I read do not describe the visual aspects of a character whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So I will go 90 pages and I couldn't tell you what anyone looks like for the entire, and I'm talking the physique, anything. There's all this whiteboarding going on about the internals of a character.
Yes.
I don't know a damn thing about what they're supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. And so it's because, and look, like representation is crucial, right? It's really important. I'm really glad that people are focused on representation, but being so scared to describe the physical attributes of a character leads to a script where the characters don't pop off the page. You can't picture them. So I've come up with this exercise that I give my clients to try. I call it the action figure exercise, because I'll be like, okay, you can tell me anything about the internals of your character. What the hell do they look like? What makes them quote unquote toyetic?
And that's writing. That is writing.
It is, right? The writer's job. Imagine if you read this script, Star Wars, and they didn't describe Darth Vader. He's scary. He had a long history of trauma. But like, you don't describe the costume.
But he looks like a dentist, like
like you don't describe the fact that his physique is bigger than anybody else in the movie. The contrast is not mentioned on the page. I read scripts like this all the time. I'm like, wait, so this fight's going on. Well, who's bigger than the other guy? Like, how big is this person? And what's anyway, so I have an exercise, and we can do this together for whoever you want, but I thought it would be fun to do for Princess Leia and for Han Solo, and we could even do them for the others if it goes fast. So here's the parameters. Their unique physical appearance, and it's not about attractiveness, even though sometimes it's relevant. It's about their physicality, what they look like. This includes hairstyles, their costume. Ask yourself when you're brainstorming, what's in your character's closet during the course of the movie? And coming up with these ideas for costumes, you can start with a costume and create like a set piece and a scenario just out of the costume. I mean, the sequels did this. Accessories. What are the things that are specific to your character that best represent them that you'd find inside the box? You got your character, and here comes their accessories with them. And even brainstorming accessories on their own, that'll give you ideas for what's going to happen. Scars, birthmarks, or tattoos. In certain movies, we see people get beat to shit, and their action figure would have them like bloodied, have like scars and stuff, because imagine if you have a John McClane action figure, he's got to have bloody feet. It's got to be dirty, right? Yeah. Like so coming up with like those types of things, it's a good idea generation tool to figure out like what are the cool things that could happen in your movie and make your character toyetic. And then the last thing is the pull string quotes or catchphrases. If they had a pull string quote, what would it say? And now you just push a button and the characters say things. I try to challenge my clients to come up with 3 lines that perfectly represent their character and what happens with their character in the story. So, unique physical appearance, costumes, accessories, scars, tattoos, or birthmarks, and pull string quotes, catchphrases. Did you guys see Free Guy, by the way? This is relevant.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of you? It's so Free Guy, Ryan Reynolds' character, the villain that they place in on the back end of the movie, he's a great example of this technique. He's incomplete. and his line is literally catchphrase. So you can see that these writers are doing this. It's kind of like a meta version of this exercise. Catchphrase. Okay, so we can bounce here. I'm not going to say anything. You guys can say it. Han Solo, his physical appearance. Not his costume, physical appearance.
Ripped, jacked.
Attractive, handsome.
Yeah, attractive, skinny,
Not too bulky, not too he's not built, he's not cut.
Right? That everyman aspect of his physique is important. Just like Indiana Jones' everyman physique, that's what he's in over his head physically in every situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And also, I think Han Solo, I mean, and this is like really like kind of deep, but I always felt like that Han Solo was kind of a criminal and like kind of didn't have wasn't like, he was kind of skinny and he was like, he didn't really feed himself right. I mean, it's just something really deep. But it's something that just his life was just, he wasn't like he wasn't a guy who was taking really good care of himself.
Yeah. Well, and you can get there off of doing this exercise.
Han Solo, he's wearing an undershirt and a vest, and he looks like he eats mac and cheese every night.
Exactly. Millennium Falcon looks like it's just
he sleeps in his clothes. It's not.
Yeah, like he probably has BO.
Yeah.
The
cockpit smells like cigarettes.
Oh,
man, Chewie's got to smell bad too. He probably.
They missed out on a scene of him like bathing Chewie, like
Chewie's dingleberries.
But like it's one of those things where you can imagine they both smell so bad, but they're used to it, and then other people have to like come into their little globe, and it's like reeks.
Oh God, yeah.
But that's texture to their story.
That's texture, right? These things.
Leia could have said, you know what I mean? Like, oh, man, what's the smell in here?
Yeah.
When's the last time you guys cleaned this shit? It's basically like two bachelors. It's a bachelor pad.
It's a bachelor pad. And you can easily, when you agree that like Luke, I don't get that from Luke. Luke doesn't look like he stinks.
No,
he looks like he takes regular showers. He brushes.
Yeah, and also Luke looks a little better fed because his aunt has the milk and he's feeding him.
Drinking that milk does the body good. Yeah,
the power of contrast.
Right.
So anyway, we got into the costumes, right? He's like a space cowboy.
Yeah.
But it's cool. What I love about like these movies, particularly, like because the toys are just perfect representation of like why it's important to do this. Han has 3 costumes in the movie. He has his space cowboy costume. He has his stormtrooper Han, and you have his sort of medal ceremony fancied up.
Yeah, the cleaned up version.
The cleaned up version. So like if you're coming up with ideas for your character and you come up with like these multiple costumes in the closet, then you can come up with ideas. Well, like, how do we get there? What does this mean? What's gonna happen to make him wear this costume?
Just I want to say, Jimmy, too, like just to clarify for anyone listening, like the exercise isn't saying you have to have a movie that has action figures. It's you want there to be a possible action figure for your characters. Like, you're not saying you should only write movies that
no, I mean figures. think about Wayne in Wayne's World.
Right,
We didn't do this exercise in our episode, but black T-shirt, mullet hair, black hat, ripped jeans. In every scene, he's wearing the same damn thing. And it makes him toyetic. Like, it makes him iconic. And that's just a comedy character. Like Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. Trench coat, top hat, briefcase, glasses. Good after. What are his pull string quotes? Ned Ryerson. Phil.
Yeah.
So you can do it with side characters. So what are some pull string quotes for Han? I'm testing you guys, your movie knowledge of this movie.
Mean, I'm gonna let Ed. You got to have one here, right? Put you on the spot.
I actually haven't seen the movies in a while.
Amazing.
But there's some.
I'm not trying to make you look.
Yeah, now I feel bad. I put you on the spot.
Ed's never seen this movie.
Yeah, he's never seen Star Wars.
What movie are we talking about?
I'll give you
Sophie's
one.
Choice.
He says, He says, hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid. I mean, that's Han Solo. Like,
I have a bad feeling about this.
I mean,
that's where I would go.
Yeah, I would go. Yeah.
He said, look, your worship, let's get one thing straight. I take orders from just one person, me. I mean, you put that on a whiteboard before the movie, you can make the whole damn movie and Han Solo stuff just based off that one line.
Yeah.
So it speaks to the power of just like brainstorming, like, what are the things my character would say that they believe about themselves that makes them unique and memorable?
Yeah.
I
have one, like when he says to Luke, "Don't get cocky" or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Calm down, kid. Be cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's the coolest character. Be cool.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly. Yeah, we just want to battle, but like, okay,
don't
we
get
get
on that, man.
All right. Yeah, we're blowing up ships. That's part of the deal.
This is a Tuesday for me, okay? Come on.
All right. We can do it. Which one do you want to do? You want to do Luke? You want to do Princess Leia? You want to do who you want to do? Let's do one more.
One more. I mean, you wanted to do Leia. Leia's fine.
Yeah,
that's a complete contrast to Han, right?
Let's do Leia. Physical appearance. I mean,
clean, regal, well coiffed.
Beautiful.
Her hair is the most coiffed hair in all of cinema, right?
And that's great contrast to the hair buns. I think is the instructive thing here. She has like a very memorable, iconic hairstyle that is so unique that it created like a craze of people wearing hair buns. And like you see those hair buns, you instantly think Princess Leia, right? Those you wouldn't think anybody else except for that. It's that mental real estate, right, Jamie?
And if I'm correct me guys if I'm wrong, but she only has 2 costumes in the movie. She just her white dress and then her ending.
She's got the stepped up white dress. Yeah, it's for the medal ceremony.
Yeah, I mean she's a princess, man.
Right.
She's
Well, in later sequels, there's been other defined looks. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. More action figures, man. Come on.
Yeah, more action. Exactly.
And then
but but Leia, which is interesting is like why her and Han kind of belong together. Is that she was kind of a wise ass too. You know what I mean? Like, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
And that's a pull quote right there.
And she comes in and talks about the Tarkin. I recognize that smell or whatever. Tarkin.
Foul stench.
She's kind of an asshole,
Yeah. Some of the quotes I said. Somebody has to save our skins.
Yeah.
And
get that walking carpet out of my way, or somebody.
That's exactly. So she's got a very unique perspective and voice.
She pulls rank on them at one point. Like, she's like,
man.
"Yo, listen to me. I'm the princess."
She says, "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but from now on, you do as I tell you."
Right.
I mean, that's Princess Leia, man.
Yeah.
And when I was watching that, I remember back when I was 5. That section got the biggest laugh out of the audience. Like when she puts them in their place and then get this walking carpet out of my way.
Oh yeah, no, people love that, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like there was nothing funnier ever said in the movie theater, you would have thought.
But so and she even has accessories, right? Like what would be the accessories in Leia's box? I mean, she would come with accessories, right?
She has that little blaster. She came with the little. I'm talking about the action figure itself. Came with the blaster.
Yeah, the blaster, right? And like you might have the MacGuffin Death Star plans, right?
The Star plans.
Yeah, the disc, and the metal in the end. You might have the metal, right? So like these things, you brainstorm these things.
Did the original releases of droid? Did the original releases of the toys actually have accessories, or were they just the toy? I don't remember them.
They had accessories.
They had accessories.
They had guns.
Yeah.
So they had guns. Like she had a little gun, like it was only for her, and then Han had his gun, and then Luke had the lightsaber.
Lightsaber came out of his arm.
And Darth Vader with their lightsabers.
Yeah. Did Chewie get a bow?
The large size R2D2.
Chewie had a little.
Had his crossbow. Yeah.
The large size R2D2 had a compartment.
And it came out.
With the plans, right?
Yeah, the little plans.
Yeah, those are awesome, man.
How big was that? How big was the R2? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the plans were just like little postage stamp size, but you can slide them out. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
They had like schematics on them. You're like, oh.
So
Our plan.
Scratch and sniff. They smell just like real plants.
so this is just an exercise when you're coming up with your characters. It's not just about the internals. The internals are important, but you gotta. It is the writer's job to make these people visual and to
What about some Chewy quotes? How about let's do some of those.
Well,
in
that one scene, he said.
Yeah.
I mean, no, Chewie's a great example too, because like it'd be easy just to that whole costume, give him nothing else, but putting a bandolier on him, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's called, right? Like that just adds everything to his character. It shows that he's a warrior, he's strong, he's been places, he's done things,
and that's writing. And granted, they have their departments, right? But ultimately, it's the writer's job to inspire these departments.
Right.
So it's writing. Coming up with the look of your character is writing.
Well, since we didn't really cover him that much on this, let's move on to Luke. Right?
Okay.
Luke's things that need fixing. Let's talk
I'm gonna
about that.
I'm gonna try to do this fast.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it short.
And then you guys can bounce off. This is another one where I was hoping together we could kind of see if this tracks. And we've talked about many characters. There's the idea of when you introduce your character in their before world, in their ordinary world, that you want to give them multiple things that need fixing, so that we can see them in conflict with these multiple layers of things during the subplots and in their interactions with characters, and give them things to grow out of, into better people. So these things that need fixing fall into 5 categories generally: changes in attractiveness or false beliefs or personality, strained personal relationships, not being entrusted with responsibility or not being able to handle responsibility, being invisible to key people or seeking invisibility, and others don't believe in you or you've given up on yourself. It's so weird. I'm picturing Obi-Wan for all these answers instantly.
Yeah, right.
But okay, let's talk about...
He fits.
I mean, Obi-Wan answers all of these.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan has strained personal relationships. Obi-Wan's not, people are like, who's that weird creepy wizard? So he's not entrusted. Obi-Wan is seeking invisibility and he's invisible by design. And Obi-Wan, others don't believe in everybody. Everybody thinks he's creepy. But what about Luke? Do you think these track with Luke? Like changes in attractiveness, not really. False beliefs, definitely.
I mean, becoming a war hero is pretty hot.
Yeah. I mean, I think changes in attractiveness kind of, the idea that, that he kind of, Leia kind of gets, he becomes attracted to Leia, which
that's true. Weird, but in this in this one, it's fine though.
Yeah.
I guess he has false beliefs that he doesn't believe he can make a difference. I mean, that's pretty damn clear, right?
But he also has such he's so eager to try. You know what I mean? That kind of butts up against that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like his eagerness to join.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He's eager, but on the flip side, like when he's really put to it with Ben, he's like, I can't do that. I have to go work in a moisture farm.
Yeah, and I think that's not able to handle responsibility, right? Like here's Obi-Wan saying you need to train in the ways of the Force and help Leia and myself because I'm too old for this shit. And he's like, I can't do that. I'm not ready for that. So yeah, he definitely is not able to handle responsibility. I feel like he does feel like he's invisible, right? He's just on this farm. He's like, I'm never going to get out of here.
Mm-hmm. Man.
So he definitely has being invisible to key people, and others don't believe in you or you've given up on yourself. He definitely does. He thinks he's a good pilot, but he definitely doesn't believe in his ability to change the war,
Yeah. Well, and even in the difference in beliefs, like, at the beginning of the movie, he's like, he wants to join the academy. Like he has this, I'm going to, all my problems are going to be, solved if I do this. And then by the end, he's like, he's completely changed.
This is insane. Yeah. This is really scary.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like he thinks the academy is going to be a breeze. And he's like, this is going to be no big deal. And then he sees them blow up a planet and all these people
that's not good, man.
Yeah.
And you can also add the microcosm of Luke's use of the Force. Like he doesn't actually, he's not arrogant with his use of the Force. He doesn't believe he can do it, and then you have to have that pep talk from
Yeah, there's
Obi-Wan.
like a second whole set of these
Right,
specific to being a Jedi.
To being a
Like,
Jedi, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, to being a Jedi, right?
You could be a Jedi like your father, and he's like, no, I can't. And then he's like, I want to be one. We get to see
then
that.
use the Force, Luke, to blow it up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And so he kind of does have all 5 of these. Okay, I wasn't sure if we were gonna find them all, but it seems like we did. So that's building onto the next thing, and I'll just real fast go through it. I'm not gonna give all the examples, but we have this, like, Jamie, I'm sure you've dealt with this before. I read a script where somebody arcs, they have their big arc moment, and you're like, wait, I didn't see anything that like would prove to me that they would grow and change. It's like on the beat sheet, they're like, they arc at this moment.
It's the biggest problem you see. They know there should be a character arc, so they just write one in when they change, but they don't write the learning lessons. They don't show the milestones along the way.
Yeah, milestones is a good word. I call it growing pains. Like, we need to see the growth chart, the growing pains of a character in order to like in Back to the Future. It's weird, like when I was tracking this, it's kind of so similar. Obi-Wan like teaching Luke how to believe in himself and use the Force. It's so similar. Marty teaching George McFly, his dad, to believe in himself and defeat Biff and save Lorraine, his mom. Like, it tracks almost like all the beats are so similar to that story. Like, you can tell that Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale were like influenced by this. But we have like basically a beginning, middle, and ending that clearly shows us how Luke is growing and changes. We get him saying, like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I'm incapable of doing this. And then we see him during the Jedi training exercises getting shot, by the little remote thing. Does the toy have a name? Do they sell that toy? What is that thing?
It's what's it called? It's just the remote droid.
Okay. And so we see him getting shot, and then Obi-Wan's like, trust your feelings, don't trust your eyes, trust your feelings, reach out, and he puts the shield down, and then he's able to stop the blast. So we get our a little bit of moment of growth and change.
What's the purpose of that blast shield, by the way? Like, why did they build that on a helmet?
Well, I guess when you're flying into the sun or some shit.
Yeah, that's good.
You're in space, Jamie. I mean, you need shields.
Come on, dude.
So you just blind yourself? Why don't you just? I don't know.
So and then we see when he watches Ben die, or so he thinks, he, like, you can see he's like tapping into his feelings, and he shoots all the stormtroopers one after the other on his first shot and shoots the controls. So he's just like, he's all of a sudden he's a damn marksman. Bam, bam, bam. And
trial by fire, right?
Yeah. And we're getting little moments of growth. And then we have the big moment where he, they sort of tease the end there with the shutting down the visor. We see sort of the same thing. He takes the technology thing away, and his targeting computer is turned off, and he just uses the Force to shoot the thing. So this movie is a great example. If you're trying to understand what it means to prove that your character is growing and changing, following Luke's using the Force is a great instructive example on how to do that. I mean, there's a reason it feels so powerful, because we've watched him grow and change into being able to do that.
Yeah.
They earn it.
Yeah,
totally do. I think we've actually covered a lot of the stuff that we had down here.
Yeah,
what if we go to 5-point finale? Let's
cool.
Finish up with 5-point finale.
I think
unless you want to do something else there, Jamie.
Good news, bad news technique might be instructive too for this one.
Okay, let's do good news.
Jimmy mapped it.
Oh man, it's a lot of just me talking again.
Oh, sorry. You know what? We
like it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
it's
there's
just a good one for this.
There's the next. Is this a Terry Rossio exercise, Jamie?
No, I think it's Will Martell. Actually.
Will Martell. Okay.
Yep.
So William Martell. His Blue Book series. If you're out there and you've never heard of William Martell, he has some of the greatest screenwriting books that exist, and they're called the Blue Book series. And this is a technique where, okay, you have an action scene, right? And you're starting from scratch, and you got to get from beginning to end, and you want to make it interesting. Well, one really simple way to do that is just make a blank list of good news, bad news, good news, bad news, good news, bad news, and fill in the blanks of how your character gets from the beginning of this scene full of conflict to the end of that scene. And just by doing that, and it works with dialogue, two people sitting at a table. The good news is the conversation is going good. The bad news is I just said something and put my foot in my mouth. The good news is I remembered something good to say. It works with dialogue too. So
the two episodes of ours that shine here, I think, were Raiders and Solo.
Raiders and Solo have great
good news, bad news action.
The big wing scene in Raiders is amazing with this. Okay, so this is Luke and Leia on the bridge scene when they're running from the stormtroopers. This is the bridge scene, and it's such an instructive example. So I'll try to use my Micro Machines voice. Ready? The good news is they've outrun the stormtroopers, reached a bridge, and shut the blast door behind them. The bad news is they can't lock the door. There's no lock on the door. The good news is Luke blasts the control panel so the incoming troops can't open the door. The bad news is the bridge is broken, and in order to get it to extend across, they needed that panel that Luke just blasted. The good news is Luke has a plan to use his grappling hook to swing across. The bad news is on the other side of the bridge, the troopers have arrived and are shooting at them. The good news is Luke manages to fight them off with his blaster. The bad news is while Luke readies his grappling hook, more troopers arrive on the other side of the bridge as reinforcements and fire at them. The good news is Leia managed to fight them off with her blaster. The bad news is the troops on the other side of the door behind them are starting to open it. Here they come, she says. The good news is Luke launches his grappling hook onto the rafters above them. The bad news is the troopers have almost managed to open the door behind them and they're almost coming through. The good news is Luke and Leia swing across the other side of the bridge together and race to safety, escaping the troops. So that entire scene is just one exercise in good news, bad news. Every single moment is a positive, a negative, a positive, a negative. So it's just a great example of like how to make a scene, really any scene, interesting.
Especially, action specifically, but it works almost with any, like, even conversations.
It works with conversations. You could do that with two people sitting at a table and make it fun.
Yeah, so, and I think the best way to do it is if, first of all, it has to escalate. Like you should keep escalating so you know you're getting toward the end. And so everything should be a little worse for the hero as it goes on. And then there's also some great ones where the good news is actually bad news. It's kind of like a false victory.
Better news, but not so good news.
Right.
Not so good news.
If you can find those, they're always kind of a laugh. They're always kind of
like, oh wait, Indy's gonna reach for his gun. Oh wait, his gun's not there. Like moment where you're like, oh, he has a gun. Oh wait, he's not. Yeah, so even worse.
But I'll read scripts where there's an action scene and our hero is just kicking ass for the entire time. It's just flat. So even though from a writing standpoint, you're like, all this cool stuff is happening, but it's not exciting because everything that's happening is all positive. It's all good news. And I'll read one script after another. There's literally no bad news for an entire action sequence. And so you're like, this is very fun to read, but it's not like I feel no stake.
I see that in the fun and game section of scripts all the time. So the early second act, there's just no obstacles. There's no bad news. It's just a straight trajectory of like the hero just conquering, stuff. And
Neo can control the Matrix at the beginning of the movie. And runs through everybody, right?
Yeah, we didn't get into it, but that's a good point, Bob. Like one thing I was struck by this movie is how the Empire has like total dominant control until like 30 seconds before the movie's over.
Yeah.
Like it isn't until like 30 seconds before the movie's over. And even then Tarkin's like, who cares? Like, you really want me to run away right now in our moment of triumph? Like, we got this. Like, even in the moment where they're finally feeling a little sense of danger, they're like, nah, we're in control.
And in the grand scheme of the OT, it's like we're still watching a small victory. Like they have so much resources, they're gonna build a second one.
They're already building a second one.
Yeah, they're already on it. Yeah. They've got everything.
You don't want your hero to gain the upper hand too soon. And I read that all the time. We're like 50% into the script. The hero's kind of got the villain on their heels. and now the hero's in control, and that's you want.
It's just boring, man.
This makes for a boring story. Yeah.
What happens in the fun and game section? A lot of times people think that should just be a montage. Like, imagine if it's you could almost see this movie. Imagine if it's montage of, and then they go to a bar and they give Han Solo money and they fly away and there's no back and forth and no conflict in any of the scenes. That's kind of
I could see that as
that's a YouTube edit right there, I guess. But
put some like space techno in the Mos Eisley Cantina for like 30 seconds and like
Han and Chewie eating an ice cream cone and laughing. That'd be fun.
And then running on the beach together, holding hands.
Okay, so
5-point finale, right?
Related to the good news, bad news, the 5-point finale is kind of this for the finale in some ways, and the 5-point finale is something from Save the Cat Strikes Back. So there's in Save the Cat, there's this huge finale section, and Blake Snyder basically said, just go do a finale. And he didn't really give any guidance. So then in Strikes Back, he kind of came up with some guidance, and you'll find it, to steal one of Jimmy's terms, it tracks in a lot of different movies. It tracks in rom-coms, dramas, but it really, really, really tracks almost on the nose way.
I mean, it's
for this movie. Like, this movie is the example of it. So I figured it'd be worthwhile to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The 5 points are, I'll go through the 5 points first, and then we can kind of walk through them. Step 1 is gathering the team. This is usually where the team comes together. Sometimes it's a suit up montage. Sometimes it's getting in vehicles. It's kind of getting ready to go. Step 2 is execution of the plan, or as I like to call it, storming the castle.
Mm-hmm.
So usually go for it, Jimmy.
In a siege movie, it's defending the castle. So
in a siege movie, it's defending whatever the plan is. I mean, the plan in a rom-com, it's running to the airport or something. So it's all that kind of stuff. Step 3, and this is the big one. This is the one that's so important, is your finale. And this goes back to the good news, bad news montage thing we were talking about. There has to be a surprise. The plan cannot work. That's the big thing. So the plan can mostly work. It can be a great plan, but there's some surprise. There's some reason. Either the bad guy knows, there's some trick, something has to happen. And you'd think this would be obvious, but you'd be surprised how many scripts I read where, again, there's no big surprise. The plan just kind of works out. The end. It's almost like the writer gets bored of the script.
It's like Ocean's 11. The heist works perfectly, and they get away scot-free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
you could even label this with Akbar's "It's a trap."
It's a trap. It's a trap.
Exactly. The Death Star is operational.
Right.
Absolutely. So then the other part that gets into theme and character arc. Step 4 is the dig down deep. So at this point, the hero has to come up with a new plan, and usually it has something to do with the character arc. For some reason, the hero is different in the end of your movie, so they have to come up with something that they couldn't have come up with in the beginning of the movie. There's something that's changed. So they dig down deep, and then step 5 is execution of the new plan. So whatever plan they come up with, that's what they do, and they execute it. So you can kind of see, you probably already can see in your head where this goes in Star Wars. Gathering the team. What do you think gathering the team is? I mean, it's gathering the team, right?
There's a gathering the team scene. They're suiting up for war, literally.
They're literally. It's literally storming.
I mean, this
is
a war movie, so this stuff follows to the T, right?
They lay out the plan for us visually. We see the 3D model.
They have a meeting, for God's sake.
I mean, we see a 3D model of the trenches.
There's a pep talk, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
And then storming the castle is just executing that plan. Let's go attack the Death Star. Let's get in the trenches. It's the initial engagement.
The whole squadron storms down.
Shoot the torpedo in the hole. Like that's
the high
plan,
towers.
Right?
The high tower surprise is a little. It's not as big of. It's a trap.
It's a little. Movie. It's a little weak. Yeah, it's a
little weak. It doesn't have. Yeah. So, but I think there's a couple things. I think it's Vader saying, I'm going out there.
It's Vader.
Yeah, and also the fact that they just can't seem to hit the target. I mean, that's kind of like
it doesn't work.
It's not easy. It's not easy to do.
Yeah,
right?
It has its own failures. Yeah.
So dig down deep. I see there's really two things, and remember, dig down deep's related to arc. So part of it is, use the Force, Luke and Obi-Wan. It's always weird because Luke like holds his ear, like he's like, is that over my speaker?
Is he over my speaker?
He should have like looked around.
Yeah.
Are you in here, man?
Ben, is Ben there with you? Yeah.
Ben,
alive.
I thought you were dead, dude.
Yeah.
So
Have you been watching me the whole time?
Exactly.
You watch me go to watch me take that big dump at the base.
That fear
Sounds like-
dump.
yes.
Yeah, the pre-attack dump.
That's step 0, the pre-attack, the pre-planned dump.
Blake Snyder didn't cover the dump.
No, he didn't cover the pre-plan. So there's really 2 parts to this one, in my opinion. So use the Force, Luke, but then also the fact that Han comes and saves the day. I think that's kind of showing his arc. Like
That's his
arc would
dig
be-
down deep.
Absolutely.
His dig
Yeah.
down deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, execution, the plan. He turns off his what does he turn off again?
The-
His
it's the targeting.
The targeting
computer.
system.
targeting. He's
Yeah.
turned off his targeting.
Yeah.
He's the targeting computer, man. Come on.
Targeting computer. And he blows the sucker up, and that is your 5-step finale.
Yeah. So it's like the quintessential, example of this technique and how it works to make a compelling last 10, 20 minutes of your movie. That's 20 minutes of the movie right there. So
Yeah.
Even if you don't read Save the Cat Strikes Back, you can just watch Star Wars and pretty much.
yeah, I mean, and you could do 5-point finales in any scene. Like you can take this technique and make another scene interesting by using the same damn technique to make the end just like this. Yeah.
Or a sequence. Like I use it sometimes. I instruct people to use it in fun and games. The dig down deep part might be a little different.
Yeah, you can nix that, but yeah.
But throwing a surprise in the middle of like your first half of Act 2, sometimes just throwing like a midpoint Hightower surprise at your hero, so things shift a little bit.
But sometimes doesn't like some movies do it too many times, and you're like,
I agree.
It's the ending. Oh my god. Okay.
I can't
now
stand
it's
that.
the ending.
Yes.
Oh shit! It's not over yet.
I agree. I agree.
I think it's the plague of the Marvel movies. I think the Marvel movies give you like 4 of these or something.
Yes.
I don't quite get it. I just want one. I want to go
Just give me
home.
one. Yeah.
Like,
I gotta-
are you saying like Endgame could have been like the Cap story right there, but then there's like 9 other ones. You know what I mean?
It seems
like Cap
to have,
digs down deep, and then you see everyone else dig down deep. Yeah.
and honestly, we talked about it with the Batman last week.
Yeah, right.
And that's why that one has multiple endings in some ways. I guess I'm spoiling the Batman.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'll be cautious.
Yeah, Batman.
Not really.
Such an asshole.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I find the Marvel movies do it almost always. Like I get to the end and I know that I see the gathering, the team, and I look at my watch and I'm like, I don't have a watch actually. I look at my phone, and it's like 50 minutes or an hour is left, and I'm like, oh no,
Oh no, there's gonna be 2
yeah.
endings. Like, yeah.
It's a 5-point full runtime.
When in doubt, consolidate.
Yeah.
I like the old way where they just had one and you could finish it off. It's like,
Yeah.
to me, this movie has like the perfect ending. It still holds up. I even like the look of it. Everything just still holds up.
It doesn't overstay its welcome for even
Never.
a minute. It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that brings us to this being over, I guess.
Speaking
right?
of perfect endings.
Speaking of, that was our 5-point finale.
Yeah.
Ed, thank you for listening to Jimmy talk.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure, man. It was,
Jesus.
I learned a lot.
I always do. Yeah. Did you guys? Did anyone want to say anything they actually learned from doing this episode? Anything new?
Yeah, I mean, I learned. I think the thing that the most surprising thing to me was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and the power of that. Like, if this was Earth 3300, it would just suck. And
well, yeah. I mean, it would be Star Trek. Not that Star Trek sucks.
No, I love Star Trek.
Star Trek rules.
But there is a difference when you're tied into which is basically science fiction. It's why Star Wars is science fiction fantasy. Really, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes the fantasy out.
Star Wars has more in common with
Completely.
Lord of the Rings than, you know what I mean? With,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just with gadgets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was what I learned, that the power of that choice and genre and tone, you know.
I mean, for me, I'm going to say I didn't know that R2-D2 was ever supposed to talk. I never knew that. I've never heard that before, and that would totally ruin all the funny moments in the movie. So for me, that's huge. You know, the comic relief being totally destroyed, I would be sad.
I'm working on a fan edit where it's Larry David as R2-D2.
Okay, maybe I'll watch that.
Yeah, okay.
I'll probably like that.
It would be funny though to do like just R2-D2 talking the whole movie, like what he's saying those CPs, like you fuck you ass, golden bastard, get out of here.
A fan edit.
And he curses. It's like
R2-D2 definitely got a filthy mouth, man. He's a mechanic basically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. He's
always,
yeah.
And he's always complaining about stairs and stuff that he can't go up and down.
Yeah. Where's the ramp?
Yeah, where's the ramp? Yeah. Inconsiderate.
Where's the damn ramp?
Yeah.
Hell
So
yeah.
inconsiderate. All right. Did you anybody want to plug anything before we stop? Ed, you got anything you want to plug? I don't even.
Nah, not really, man. I'm plugged out. I'm all plugged out.
In that case, I think we're good, right, guys?
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you so
It
much
was
for
a
coming, Ed.
blast.
It was seriously
thank you,
great.
Ed. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.